welcome to World Insight, coming to you from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Poland, a crucial stop along the planned Belt and Road. Can the two countries build further links? And ahead of the Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to China, we'll examine the driving forces behind the China-Russia relationship. We begin today's show with Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Poland, the second stop on his three-nation Eurasian tour. Xi's visit is expected to help further align China's Belt and Road initiatives with Poland's development plans and promote Poland's role as an engine to boost the China-CEE cooperation. After Poland, Xi will travel to Uzbekistan for a state visit and attend the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
President Xi Jinping has arrived in Warsaw, Poland for a state visit that is expected to boost bilateral ties and strengthen China's relations with Europe. It's the first state visit to Poland by a Chinese president in 12 years.
We agree that both nations should push for stable and long-term development of bilateral relations on the basis of mutual trust and mutual benefit. During this visit, we also talked and reached consensus on issues such as planning an outline for cooperation between the two nations, setting up a steering committee for industrial cooperation, more cooperation in building up Cyber Silk Road, and in the field of logistics.
China and Poland have enjoyed a long history of friendship and cooperation in a wide range of areas. Poland is now China's biggest trading partner in Central Eastern Europe, and China is the country's third largest source of imports and biggest trading partner in Asia. Poland was also the first country in the region to support and become a member of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Poland-China cooperation is expected to deepen within the 16+1 mechanism between China and Central Eastern European countries, in addition to the Belt and Road initiatives.
The cooperation covers a wide range of fields, including infrastructure construction, transportation, culture, education, and academy. It is very important and very likely to be achieved.
The rail cargo service between the Chinese city of Chengdu and Poland's Lodz has become a popular logistics route for Chinese trade with Europe. It is the fastest direct freight route between the two regions.
The expectations, I think there will be more and more trains, because the plan for this year, this is 400 trains, the plan for next year, this is 1,000 trains.
China attaches great importance to its ties with Poland. The countries share a friendship that is expected to help them expand their cooperation in fields in hopes of taking bilateral relations to a new level.
And joining us to talk about China's relations with Poland, we are having here in our Beijing studio Professor Wang Yiwei, who is the director of the Center for EU Studies at Renmin University of China. Welcome, sir. Also joining us from Brussels in Belgium, we are having Mr. Danny Groh, who is the director of the Center for European Policy Studies. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. First of all, Professor Wang, strategic partnership with Poland. What does that mean? It seems China has already established quite a number of strategic partnerships
more than 70
with various countries. So what is going to be the content of this one?
Well, so-called strategic means that the relations, the meaning go beyond the bilateral. They have the regional and global significance, and also for long-term stable relations, not zigzag, because of the political turns impact. I think this is basically a signal sent to the world.
Mr. Groh, what do you make of this very big scale visit by the Chinese president to Poland? The first time in 12 years by the head of state from China to that country. What kind of signal are the two countries trying to send?
I think the signal from Poland is pretty clear. We count. We even have a strategic relationship with the biggest developing power in the world, China. I can't quite see why China would like to have special relationships with Poland. Geographically, of course, Poland is a little bit between the Silk Road and the core of the EU. But in economic terms, what matters is the core of the EU, which means France and Germany and the rest of the continent. So I think that should remain the focus of Chinese European policy.
Interesting. Professor Wang, I want you to respond to what Mr. Guo just said, particularly given the fact that I remember years back during the Bush administration, there was even talk about terminologies like so-called old Europe and the new Europe. Of course, we don't agree with those terms, but certainly they was trying to divide Europe into those that are traditionally strong countries and those after 1989, the collapse of Soviet Union, all the other countries were becoming part of the European Union. So what do you make of Mr. Guo's comments earlier?
Well, of course, France, Germany, UK is most important in the European Union for China relations bilaterally. But Poland is the new member of the European Union, biggest one. I think there's huge potential for development. Poland is a regional big country. The gap between East and the West is also very huge. So the eyes on the Chinese investment to bridge the regional gaps, and also has a lot of potential for investment in infrastructure building, and also want to build more connections with China. And that many made in Poland, like beef, like milk, also want to ship to China. Now from the Euro-Asian Express, from the cargo, and I think lots of economic potential cooperations with Poland.
Of course, these are all very specific initiatives between the two countries. And now we are also having Professor Bogdan Garazik, who is a director of the Center for Europe at the University of Warsaw, joining us live in our program. Professor Garazik, first of all, welcome to our program. I know it's a big day for China and Poland, a lot of events going on. It's great to have you here for our program. What do you make, Professor Garazik, of the current nature of relations between China and Poland, and how would that be compared to China's relations with some of the other European countries, for example, the UK, France, Germany? What is likely to be the pillar that is holding this relationship together?
Well, welcome to the program, and thank you for inviting me. Poland is the largest so-called new member states. When the enlargement in 2004 took place, the 10 new member states were adopted, and Poland alone was the largest, bigger than all 9 others combined in territorial and population terms, which means that Poland is the 6th largest economy and largest country in the European Union. Of course, we would like to have this kind of relationship as China has with some Western partners, starting from Germany. I know that Chancellor Merkel was just a week ago in China, but we still need to make a lot of homework here in Poland. In Polish history we had a curse that Poland is somewhere between Russia and Germany, which was not a perfect situation, but fortunately right now, from geostrategic point of view, it is probably the most valuable situation. We are a middle kingdom is China, and we are in the middle of Europe. So we could be a perfect hub for all countries in Europe. And during the visit of President Xi Jinping here, the special hub was chosen. This is a town of Łódź, not far from Warsaw. It means like a neighborhood of Warsaw. And from here you will go with the Chinese transportation, all kinds, including, I understand, even aviation, sometimes to the other part of Europe.
I see.
So Russia and Germany is our perfect localization.
Mr. Guo, do you agree with your Polish counterpart? Besides economic and logistic means, is Poland likely to hold a strategic position, given the fact that it has also been one of those players in some of the most important strategic and also missile defense kinds of networks in Europe. What do you make of the position of Poland within Europe? Is Poland likely to go, quote unquote, the West, or is Poland likely, from your perspective, looking around as well?
Well, I think as an EU member,
let's have.
You mentioned.
I know both of you are talking. Let's have Mr. Groh to talk first. Then I'll go back to you, Mr. Goralczyk.
As a member of the European Union, one presumes that Poland will be looking west, that it is fully part of the EU, and that if needed, of course, if any doubts arise about the military backing, that is a question of NATO. But in economic terms, I think the future of Poland lies within Europe, and the only big question that is still open is whether Poland wants to join sooner or later the euro, because only then can Poland really play a full part in the European political economy, which is after all made out of the euro area and its banking union.
Professor Goralczyk, that's your turn to talk now. Is the aspiration mentioned by Mr. Groh also the aspiration of Warsaw?
Well, aspiration of Warsaw were located in the western part of the world for several decades, and we were sleeping, neglecting so-called emerging markets, starting from China, but all kind of BRIC countries and developing countries. So for us, it is a new chapter. However, Professor Gross is right. Our localization, our alliances are in the western part of the world, which doesn't mean that we don't want to have to make a business with eastern countries, starting from China. Just to compare what has happened today, yesterday, and tomorrow, we have a summit meeting with China. In 2 weeks' time, we will have a summit meeting, or rather NATO summit meeting here in Warsaw. So we will have all the presidents, starting from President Obama, in our capital city. So it means that we need to elaborate and go further to the developing countries, to the emerging markets, and Chinese idea, vision of One Belt, One Road is just a marvelous opportunity. That's the reason our leaders signed some 40 agreements during the visit of President Xi here in Poland, and 2 of them were signed personally by our deputy prime ministers, which is significant.
All right.
Which is significant.
Yes, indeed. Professor Wang, as both the other guests mentioned, this is pretty much a multipolarized world. There are so many pillars of the world that is making up our geopolitics these days. So what is the realistic expectations China are having in terms of the nature of relations with Poland, for example, or some of the other countries? It seems from Professor Goralczyk in Poland, the ties is mainly in the economic and trade issues. What they are looking for is a huge market, and also being a link between Europe and China. And beyond that, it is also falling back, as Professor Goralczyk said, to its origin, which is quote-unquote in the West. So, Professor Wang, what is the realistic expectations from China about this relationship?
Well, I think Poland played a key role in the so-called 16+1 China and Central Eastern European countries cooperations.
Yes.
That's the 2012. The first meeting was held in Warsaw. Why? I think those Eastern Central European countries, they are quite poor. 11 are the members of European Union, and 5 non-European Union member, but try to join the European Union. So this cooperation with China will help them to bridge the gaps, and help them to increase the economic situation to join EU. In this regard, I think Poland has successfully found its new role in connecting China and the European Union. So we always highlight that our relation with Poland is also very important part of our whole relation with the European Union. And Poland also very happy to want to be the gateway, attract Chinese investment to access to the central of other European countries.
Right.
And Poland, as a new member, they enjoy the financial assistance from European Union. But 2020, this will be finished. So the Warsaw will eyes on Chinese investment. This, I think, is a mutual needs, mutual beneficial cooperations.
Mr. Guo, I have to come back to you. You are the expert about the European Union. Every time we rely on your expertise about that. You saw countries like Poland becoming ever more active economically and trade-wise for its links with the rest of the world beyond the European border. You also see Poland, this country itself, even though it is inside Europe, it has enjoyed more than 3% GDP growth, unlike some of the other economies of the European countries. And you also see it is becoming ever more active to seek a logistics center of its own inside Europe and beyond. So many would ask the question, Mr. Guo, what is likely to be the potential of these kind of countries, particularly like Poland, within the European Union? Is it going to have, as a result of all of these efforts, becoming much more with bargaining chips within the Pacific bloc?
You are right. The economic potential in some of the Central and Eastern European countries is high, particularly also in Poland. I myself predicted some time ago that maybe in the next generation, Polish income per capita might even overtake that of Germany if Poland continues to perform as well as it does right now. That's a very long road, but it is possible. For the time being, however, most of these countries still are beneficiaries of money from the EU, from Brussels, and therefore their bargaining power is of course somewhat limited, because they cannot both pretend to be paid and then also have an important influence. Further reduction of their bargaining power results from the fact that they are not member of the euro. And that of course means that in the biggest game of all, namely the euro and all the banking union stuff which goes with the euro, they are not represented, and that is a big question. Will that change? If it does change, then I think the influence could increase a lot.
Then I have to ask you, Professor Gawrowczyk, will that change from Poland's perspective? How long will it take for you to become also a euro country? How important is it for you?
Well, first of all, we have another issue today on the agenda, or this week, which is Brexit voting in United Kingdom. This is a major threshold, whatever happens. And we have a huge debate already for several months what to do with the Eurozone here in Poland. And we are rather divided how to behave. We have adopted rather Chinese position, wait and see, as for now. However, we cannot wait and see if Professor Gross is right that we need to jump to the level of Germany, so we cannot just wait and see. We need to be effective and knowledgeable and active. And in this respect, we need to find some other investment sources. And Chinese offer, Chinese vision, Chinese idea, both One Belt, One Road and 16+1 mentioned in your studiogram, is just a perfect opportunity, and Poland is really centrally located. You just cannot neglect it. You can play with Czech Republic, but Poland is just well placed and the largest, and so close to many other important places starting from Berlin.
I see.
It's just a short communication link between Warsaw and Berlin. So we have some advantages here in Europe. Our geographical position is advantageous, but at the same time we need to diversify our sources and resources, and that's what's undergoing during this visit. That's the reason we signed so many agreements, and we upgraded our relationship from a strategic relationship with China signed 5 years ago during the visit of Polish president to a comprehensive strategic relationship, which is rather unique in the Chinese case.
That's right. Even though China has already got quite a number of comprehensive strategic partnership, but still that title is very important. Having said that, though, Professor Wang, Belt and Road Initiative certainly has been a great momentum to rally China's relations with many of the possible partners for the future, Poland included. This time there's also Silk Road Forum together with China-Polish Economic Forum. But how much will that talk be able to be implemented and become real projects on the ground? Just one note for our audience, we do know there's going to be inauguration of the railroad, the expressway, coming from Poland and also all the way to China's Chengdu. But that's one project. What about all the other comprehensive plans? When are they going to be grounded, Professor Wang?
Well, Belt and Road Initiative, basically the idea is mutual connectivities in Eurasia continent. So to help the landlocked countries and areas to access to the sea. And Poland is just located in the heart. Okay, also to the north access to the Baltic Sea, and then the North Sea, and even extend from the south to connect with the Hungary-Serbia's railway, and then extend to the south to connect with the Pedros of the Greece. This is the continental and the maritime Silk Road to connect each other. So Poland is just the bridge. Also, it's a connect between Russia and Europe.
So that's going to be, once again, very important. Mr. Groh, before we go, final words from you. When can we expect, from your perspective, that grand picture of Belt and Road initiatives being eventually implemented inside European countries, including countries like Poland? If that is likely to be the case, once again, how will the proportion of Poland and other countries, their bargaining power, and their share of confidence be inside the European Union? Mr. Groh.
Of course, a functioning Belt and Road Initiative would also strengthen the bargaining power and the influence of countries like Poland. It would also strengthen their economies. I don't think we should say the Belt and Road Initiative is completed at a certain point in time. This is supposed to be a mechanism which facilitates trades between the two ends of the Eurasian continent. It should be a living mechanism, and it will grow as both sides continue to grow, and especially also if the countries in the middle, some of which have very tough economic problems, can get their act together.
I see.
So I wouldn't say in X years it's finished, but I would say it is starting now, and we should get the fruits as everybody collaborates.
All right, Daniel Groh, Bogdan Geracic, and also Wang Yiwei. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us and helping us to understand this further closer ties between China and Poland and its relations with the European Union. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. Stay with us here on World Inside. We got our final segment coming right up. As China gears up to host the Russian President Vladimir Putin, we take a look at the geopolitical factors that govern China-Russian ties. Can the two nations balance their priorities? Welcome back. You're watching World Insight on CCTV News. The 20th St. Petersburg International Economic Forum ended this weekend after providing guidance and consensus on Russian and global economic development. As neighbors, China and Russia have enjoyed a strong relationship. Their achievements in bilateral economic cooperation have been significant, but the two sides have also deepened the comprehensive strategic partnership in other fields. Russian President Vladimir Putin will visit China later at the end of this week, which is also expected to strengthen Sino-Russia ties. Let's take a look.
Neighbors and partners. Last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his counterpart Vladimir Putin signed a joint statement on the alignment of China's Belt and Road Initiative and the Russia-initiated Eurasia Economic Union, both of which are seen as historic milestones that could inject vitality into the relationship. Since then, China and Russia have expanded and deepened cooperation in the areas of energy, investment, and high technology. Now, both sides are looking to boost their economic cooperation further. An offshore Chinese currency center in Moscow is in the works.
some of the things that we need to look for in the next several years is, apart from growing trade turnover, also other indicators such as greater investment cooperation between Russia and China. The scope there is tremendous, but also things such as cooperation in the financial sector and the use of each other's currencies in bilateral transactions.
In the past 3 years, Xi has met with Putin more than he has with any other head of state. From their annual regular summits to the joint celebration marking the 70th anniversary of the victory of World War II, the two leaders have maintained close contact. Later this month, Putin will visit China.
We are certain that Vladimir Putin's visit to China, planned for June, will give a powerful impulse to the many-sided strategic Russian-Chinese partnership and will favor further the realization of its truly inexhaustible potential.
The two sides are aiming to further strengthen communication and coordination on major international and regional issues.
And for more on the China-Russia, joined in the Beijing studio by Mr. Yang Xiyu, who is a senior fellow at the China Institute of International Studies. Meanwhile, joining us from Moscow, we have Mr. Dmitry Barbich, who is a political analyst from Sputnik International News Agency. Also in Moscow, we are having Mr. Anton Fedashin, who is a professor of history at American University in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the three of you, gentlemen, for being with us. Professor Fedashin, from your perspective, what about China and Russia ties? Is it a tie out of convenience, or is it a tie out of future potentials?
Well, I think it's both. They're not mutually exclusive. It is a tie of convenience, and both countries seem to be very comfortable with admitting that. No one expects anything overly unexpectable, and it's also a strategic partnership, and both sides are approaching it very coolly and rationally.
What do you make of it, Mr. Yang, here in Beijing?
Well, I think the key word to describe the relationship is the partnership, and I want to stress the point that the partnership between China and Russia in the world is the single one based on the equal footing, based on the mutual respects. If you look at the other partnership, U.S., Japan, U.S. With whatever country, do you believe such a partner is based on the equal footing, based on the mutual respects? Even with the largest and the third largest economy, Japan and the U.S., even Japanese don't think the partnership with U.S. are equal footing. So that's the differentiation between China-Russia partnership with all the other partnership in the world nowadays.
Interesting. Mr. Barbich, your thoughts?
Well, I think that the partnership between Russia and China has developed rapidly. Let me just remind you that in the early 90s, our mutual trade was small, and it could be measured in single digits, in millions of dollars. Right now, just recently, in 2014, it almost reached $100 billion. You know, the general turnover of the trade between Russia and China. I think the United States helped that development a lot. Mr. Obama, by his aggressive policies, antagonized both Russia and China, in this way pushing Beijing and Moscow towards each other.
But Professor Fedashin, President Obama is not necessarily, at least so far, at the end of his term, known for being harsh and also being specifically strategic. Yet, though, according to Mr. Barbich, he managed to put China and Russia ever closer. Is that how you also look at the things?
It is in many ways. Look, this relationship has been worked on by Moscow and Beijing for many years now, but the catalyst for this rapprochement, especially the rapidity of it, has really been the breakdown of the relationship between Russia and the West over Ukraine, which began in very late 2013, and that really kind of sped things up. But the Russians have been talking for many years about recalibrating their economic and their political ties within Eurasia and sort of rebalancing their dependence on the West with greater integration with the Far East, and especially with China. So again, what we're seeing now has been in the works, but the rapidity with which it's going on, of course, has increased. Let me just make one more additional point. Your guest in Beijing mentioned trust and respect, and I think that's a very, very important point. I agree entirely, because what the Chinese are giving the Russians is an enormous amount of respect and trust, which is what the Russians are complaining they don't get enough from the West.
But when you look at these relations, Mr. Yang, here in Beijing, between China and Russia, it has a lot to do with, all of you said, being players in the world. Let's talk about China-U.S. relations and Russia-U.S. relations. China-U.S. relations is very different in nature compared to Russia-U.S. relations. For China, it is both a cooperation partner in a way, because when it comes to trade and economic ties. However, on the other hand, it could be a competitor and sometimes a challenger when it comes to Russia-U.S. ties, China-U.S. ties. But rather, Russia-U.S. is very much on two opposite ends of a relationship. So how would you say these kind of comparison in a way shape the overall relations between China and Russia? Will that partnership sustainable?
Well, first of all, I think partnership between Russia and China is indeed in sustainable format, while Russia-U.S. China-U.S. relation are marching towards, unfortunately, negative direction simultaneously, and the negative development in the period of the power relationship make a very interesting interaction between China, Russia, and the other. So formed a triangle relationship affecting the current international affairs towards more complicated and more uncertain direction.
But you know, Mr. Barbish, one of the things that is very different between China-U.S. relations, China-Russia relations is, for China-U.S. relations, strategic usually is lagging behind the economic and trade ties.
Yeah.
But for China-Russia relations, strategic ties is much more exceeding the capability of economic and trade ties, not to mention other aspects of the bilateral relations. So once again, the question is, how sustainable could that relation be between Moscow and Beijing, given now the current nature?
Well, I think that we actually have a lot in common now with China, thanks again to the policy of the United States. You rightly mentioned that right now the trade between Russia and China is much smaller than the trade between the United States and China. But Mr. Obama is already working on that. He made China and Russia the only two countries in the Pacific region which do not participate in his project, the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. I think that was a huge mistake of Mr. Obama. It will probably make him the worst president in the history of the United States in terms of foreign policy, because he managed to antagonize both the Russian and the Chinese elites, which were not anti-Western, which were not anti-American, which want to have good relations with both the United States and the European Union.
Well,
but Mr. Obama managed to mess it up.
But Mr. Yang here in Beijing, okay.
So I think that the trade between Russia and China will grow simply because we have no other way out. There is no other way out for Russia and China to survive but to develop their bilateral cooperation.
I see Mr. Barbish has never been lack of colorful opinions, of course, throughout our discussion. But Mr. Yang here in Beijing, let me ask you, for China and Russia economic and trade ties, how complementary is it at this moment? That's one question, besides the energy. On the other hand, we also see the both sides develop its own mechanism, for example, AIIB and also OBOR, One Belt, One Road, and then for Russia is Eurasian Economic Union. But then there are discussions about whether these could be competitive mechanisms or really the two can work together. If they can work together, we haven't seen much concrete examples coming up. So when Mr. Barbish already very proud to announce that the two countries are going to be the biggest trading partners for one another in the future. What do you make of the realities, Mr. Yu?
I think the potential is really great, maybe the greatest among the powers, say China, US economic ties, China, EU, and China, Japan. All of the three bilateral economic ties has been matured, while China, Russia, far from mature. That means the potentials is much larger than other three, number one. And then number two, if you look at the history of China's former Soviet Union economic ties, used to be quite great, quite big. That's another factor for the potential. And currently, more important thing is both Russia top leader and Chinese top leader made initiatives. And you mentioned we have a one road, one belt, and they have the Euro-Asia Economic Union. Lot of overlapping areas, and the political determination has been made to conform and complement for the greater initiatives to get together. So from the political potential and economic realities, I think there are indeed a much greater room for the development.
Mr. Barbish, we are seeing the two countries getting ever closer, particularly in the month of June. This is a big month, rather, for Russia and China ties. SCO coming up, both Chinese president and Russian president are going to be there. And then the Russian president likely to make a state visit to China as a routine trip. So what can we expect out of this at this crucial moment?
This coming visit of Mr. Putin to China will be as big a success as his visit in 2014 when he signed the agreement on the so-called Force of Siberia, you know, the famous pipeline which is due to reorient the extraction of Russian natural resources from the western traditional direction to the eastern new Chinese direction. I think the European Union and the United States only have themselves to blame for the reorientation of Russian energy exports to China. I think that in order to spoil relations with China, the United States doesn't need Russia. If you look at the statements from Hillary Clinton, who said that China was a threat, if you look at other irresponsible statements from Mr. Obama, before him from Mr. Romney and other US politicians, they are anti-Chinese enough without Russia being an additional factor in that. So I think that we're simply doomed to be very good partners and I hope allies with China, because this is the only way for us to survive.
All right.
Let me remind you that in 2014, when Putin was coming to China, the Chinese have kept demanding that the price for the Russian gas to be shipped to China, that price should be low. So it created very bad economic conditions for the Russian energy supplies to China. But then Mr. Obama went to the Philippines and he went to Japan and he made hostile statements about China in every location that he visited in 2014. And that helped the Chinese to heighten the price for the Russian gas.
Wow.
So Mr. Obama, by his actions, can be called the main promoter of Russo-Chinese cooperation. Thanks to him for that.
All right.
And I hope the American people will demand from him, will make him responsible for the terrible, terrible consequences of his policies right now.
And of course, Mr. Yang here is about the sanctions that the West has toward Russia. Some argue that's already been the momentum in which Russia are using now to provide China with lower prices, and whether that's likely to change or not in the near future, given the relations between Moscow and the West, is still a big question mark. Having said that, though, final question for you, Mr. Yang, what can you expect out of the month of June, China-Russia ties? This is
well, I think the current situation will push Russia and China closer, both economically and strategically. Economically, as I mentioned, both of the top leaders and two governments will make a greater efforts to turn the potentials into reality. Yeah. And strategically, I think China and Russia will cooperate more closely on the individual hot issues, ranging from the THAAD issue on the peninsula to the strategic stability in general means with the United States. And in fact, both Moscow and Beijing really want to develop a good relationship with Washington. However, if Washington determined to take a hostile policy against Beijing and Moscow, Moscow will take corresponding reactions. On one hand, closer ties. On the other hand, more cooperation for maintaining peace and stability by our own ways.
Well, final words also from you, Mr. Feydashin.
I have a very optimistic expectation for Russian-Chinese relations for the upcoming visit, and I think that if the two countries speak to each other from positions of respect, it's a great example of what two great nations can do for the rest of the world. Dialogue, respect, respect for sovereignty. This is a great example of what dialogue and smart diplomacy without emotions can actually achieve, both politically and economically.
And Tom Feydashin, Dmitry Barbish, Yang Xiyu, thank you so much for being with us. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of a program, visit our website. Just type in World Insight CCTV News into your search engine. You will be able to find us, or you can also check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone at the World Insight team, thanks for watching. And tune in again tomorrow for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night.